Welcome back to the Get Off The Treadmill podcast for small business owners and entrepreneurs, where we show you how to build a successful business and to have a life too. We're going to dive into another topic that helps us make more money in less time and to get off the treadmill so we can experience a life of significance. And now, your host and the author of the #1 best-selling business book, Making Money is Killing Your Business, Chuck Blakeman.
Hi, I'm Chuck Blakeman, and today we're going to talk about the mission-centered organization. This is part one of two short podcasts that we're going to talk about mission-centered organizations, how to build an organization built on leaders, not on managers. We're going to have a lot of fun today. We're going to throw some stones. You know, it's always fun to throw stones. Sometimes it's counterproductive. Sometimes it needs to be done. In this case, I think it needs to be done. Let's find out. I want to talk first about a company called Semco when I'm talking about mission-centered organizations. Ricardo Semler took over his dad's company called Semco in 1982. He was in his early 20s, and when he took over the company, it was teetering on the edge of bankruptcy and had been failing for quite a few years. With that backdrop, Ricardo told his dad he would take over under one condition, that he could move the company in any direction he wanted without his dad's interference. Not hard to agree to that because it was really close to bankruptcy. What followed was the creation of a model of participation age structures and a company that in 20 years went from $4 million and losing money to over $200 million and making tons of money in those 20 years with staggering and unheard of loyalty from their people and productivity from those folks. During that exponential growth period, employee retention went from an abysmal 65%, that means 35% of the people were leaving every year, to 98%. Only 2% of the team quit every year, compared to what's normal in manufacturing is 30 to 35%. 2%. That alone saved the company tens of millions every year in training and lost momentum. That's because they made this switch to what we call a mission-centered organization. What drove it? The short answer is that over the next few years, Ricardo Semler dismantled the middle management structure and created distributed decision-making teams. We call those DDM teams. DDM, you'll hear that a lot from me, with no managers anywhere in the manufacturing plant. The DDM teams make the decisions. He didn't just distribute the decision-making back to where the decisions would have to be carried out, but he built the company around one profoundly unbusinesslike practice, giving up control of the decisions to the people who carry them out. He practiced extreme employee engagement and trust. And he focused a work environment where employees are treated as adults, capable of setting their own goals, managing their time, and shaping their own professional paths, like they did at home and like they regularly do at home. He built the company to benefit the people who worked there. What a weird reason to build a company. And as a result, he created a company with staggering growth, unheard of profits, and employee retention that seemed impossible. He called it simply a participatory structure. He'd never heard about a participation age company, but it remains one of the great models of the participation age that is slowly taking over from the archaic industrial age factory system pyramid scheme. He talked about that top-down power pyramid scheme's Achilles heel, which is the constant drive for upward mobility. Ricardo said the organizational pyramid emphasizes power, promotes insecurity, distorts communications, hobbles interaction, and makes it very difficult for the people who plan and the people who execute to move in the same direction. Powerfully insightful. He wasn't alone. Many others, and we'll show you examples going back into the 1950s of companies who have worked without managers and have developed what we call a participation age model around being mission-centered. Peter Drucker, the famous management consultant from the late 1990s, also had issues with this classic corporate pyramid scheme, saying what motivates workers is what motivates volunteers. They need to know the organization's mission and to really believe it. This is a famous organizational consultant management guy #1 saying, this is really about everybody knowing the organization's mission, believing it, and then working it out. Sadly, and unlike most nonprofits, I could count on less than a few fingers the large corporations where people doing the actual work could even recite the mission statement, let alone be motivated by it. This radical focus on being mission-centered is a foundational principle and practice of participation age companies, providing a model of organic leadership, which we'll talk a lot about later. Stay with me, a lot of buzzwords here. Organic leadership versus imposed leadership, which is what the top-down thing is. In mission-centered organizations, both strategic and tactical leaders find their true north for how to make decisions. So what is a mission-centered organization? Well, a few years ago, a friend of mine, Doug Kirkpatrick, he's a seasoned practitioner and advisor for self-management for companies who do a lot of that. He worked first in the Morningstar Company, which is the largest tomato paste manufacturing company in America. And they are a model of what I would call a participation age company. I think they might have been the first ones to articulate really well what it means to be a mission-centered business. And he shared this with me. And he said, what we teach people is that the mission is the boss. A simple, powerful, and life-changing approach for any organization. The mission is the boss for all of us. Everything lines up differently when you stop worrying about pleasing a human boss and everyone in the organization fully embraces the empowering practice of being mission-centered as the basis for building a great product or service and creating happy, loyal customers. A great mission statement is simple and powerful and describes the result. Let me say that again, the result you want to get your customer or your client, what you want them to experience, what result you want to get them. That is the best mission statement. A great mission statement example would be Fuji Film. They don't talk about making great film or great cameras or any of that stuff. Here's their mission statement: giving the world more smiles. That is a results-based mission statement, and you can build a company around that. It's not about film or camera products. Those are just the means by which the result is derived. It's a great example, which is bigger than the delivery of a product or service. It embodies the entire customer's experience, and that's what a good mission statement does. Thanks to Doug's simple summary, we put it all under the principle of the mission-centered organization. When you fully embrace the idea of being mission-centered, it impacts your organization at every level. There are two major implications of moving from a boss-centered top-down structure to a mission-centered structure. First, being mission-centered does just that. It moves the focus from bosses, departments, departmental rivalries, one department trying to Borg and eat another one so that they can make more money. And it all puts it into a commonly held, widely accepted purpose: serving the customer. What a radical thing to do. Hey, let's focus on that, and let's use every one of our resources and all of our intent for that. And then let's reward people for doing that, not for all the nonsense that goes on in the top-down thing. Factory system organizations, and I would remind you that 98% of all corporations and small businesses today are still organized just like factories, with guys in ties sitting at the top of the pyramid, telling everyone at the bottom of the pyramid what to do. These classically structured organizations are either boss-centered, department-centered, or a combination of both. Because the manager has a gun, what gun does the manager have? I can fire you. That's the gun they have. For survival alone, you are going to be boss-centered or focused heavily on making that boss's department really successful. Organizations that suffer under the factory system hierarchy deal with ongoing wars between departments. It's common. Sales and ops are always at odds. Accounting is on our backs. Administration is underrated. Upper management is considered clueless. And nobody understands what marketing does, right? The localized fixation with a boss or a department results in tribes and an ongoing effort to protect and broaden the influence of the department, often with no connection to the company's objectives. It's just about how do we get bigger or more money. Managers come by this honestly. We shouldn't throw stones at the managers. I throw stones at the role. But managers come by this honestly because we tend to pay them for how many people they have under them, how big their budget is, and how many assets they manage. So in order to get a raise, they feel compelled to chase and control more of these things. If they can take over somebody else's department, it's more money for me. That's how the game works. And in the process, they completely lose sight of what serves the entire company, and they teach everybody on the line to completely lose sight of what serves the entire company and what serves the customer. There's a guy who recognized this. In a memo to Tesla staff, maybe 8 or 10 years ago, Elon Musk decried this cumbersome political nature of management layers and issued an edict. This was like 8 or 10 years ago. And this is a quote: "Two people should just talk until the right thing happens." He wanted to get rid of all the nonsense, all the politics, and you got to go from this supervisor to that manager, and from that manager to the director, and from the director back down to the manager, and then the supervisor, and then across to the other guy. It's like 36 points of contact to just say hello. He was getting driven nuts by that. He went on to say in this email that he sent out to the company 8 or 10 years ago, very profoundly, that any manager who required that they be in the loop, that they have to be in the loop on all decisions, would find themselves working in another company. At the end of the email, he expressed a clear desire to have a mission-centered organization, saying, "We are all in the same boat." That's a mission-centered organization. "Always view yourself as working for the good of the company and never for your department. Thanks, Elon," unquote. That is a mission-centered company, working for the good of the company and the good of the mission, the result that we want them to get. That's where we should be going. Well, here's an interesting side note on this. As insightful as that email was, and as threatening as it was to managers, hey, if you require that your people have to go through you for everything, I'm going to fire your ass. Nothing really materially changed at Tesla. Nothing. Life, business, and corporate politics went on pretty much as they always had before Elon sent out his email edict. And so we have to ask why. How did this incredibly insightful perspective that the top-down pyramid was just mucking things up, how did that not result in any change, even though he said it has to change, and if it doesn't, I'm going to fire you? The answer is simple. Because nothing changed structurally. He put out a principle, but he didn't change any practices or any tools, and he didn't change the structure. Managers were still managers, and they still held the careers of everybody they managed in their fickle hands. So you know what? If I worked there and saw that memo, my response would be, great. So you want me to go around my manager? You're telling me I should do that if you think they're in my way, but you haven't removed their power to fire me. Do you think I'm going to get involved in that politics? Great concept, Elon, but I'm going to stick to the power pyramid that you've left in place because I need a job. So the lesson here is that until you change the structure, you can rant all day long about how bad the factory system pyramid scheme is and how much managers get in the way. But everyone who works for them will continue to salute and implement their directives until you change the structure and you remove managers, middle management from the structure. The change has to be structural, not just a great visionary email. This is the essence of mission-centered organization. This is what it is structured to do, to refocus everyone on the success of the mission, not on the success of a boss, my department, or a team. This is simple and profound, and I've seen this change in orientation from human boss to mission boss immediately move organizations in a new direction with new energy. The second implication of this mission-centered thing is a move from a boss-centered structure to a mission-centered structure that declares the mission as the boss and places everyone under it. All of us are now under the boss, the one boss. If the mission is now the boss, I'm not the boss. You're not the boss. Nobody's the boss. It's the boss. I work for and I serve at the pleasure of the mission statement, No one human being is a boss anymore. Everyone is now a servant of the one boss, the mission statement. Hang in there with me. This sounds like chaos and anarchy, doesn't it? It's the farthest thing from it. Participation age companies are more organized and less chaotic than anything I've ever seen in the top-down factory system model. So hang in there. One manager at a company called Concentrus, who rejoined the team after learning this principle, they stopped being the manager and they just joined the team and continued to deliver some of the things that they had delivered before, and other things were delivered by other people on the team. They immediately changed the way they responded to people when they asked him what they should do. In the past, he was the manager. He believed he added value by telling them what to do, and he loved them asking, what should I do? And then he told them how to do it, and they all appreciated that. But with this new approach, he began reminding them, I'm not your boss. Who is your boss? I don't know. Think about it. What did we just say? What did we talk? Oh, you mean the mission? Yeah, the mission statement. That's my boss. That's your boss. So don't ask me what to do. And he would get them to recite the mission statement. And he would ask them, okay, so now that you've told me what result the customer wants, that's the mission statement, or what result we want them to have, what do you think the mission statement, what do you think the boss would have you do? Start there. Well, that's, of course, not the only thing you do, and we'll get into how to flesh this out, but that's where we should start. And we should filter all of our decision-making through, will this serve our mission statement? And then, of course, you get involved with other people and you get counsel and you research, but you start with, what do you think the boss would have you do? He didn't just throw this at them and walk away. That isn't leadership. That's abdication. Instead, this guy at Concentrus hung in there with them to work through how to make the change, to begin to relate to each of their issues and how they support the mission statement, not how the human boss feels. He trained them on how to do this because, as we'll learn in an upcoming podcast, one of the core differences between managing and leading is this. Managers tell, leaders ask. And in the process, when we don't have managers anymore, the managers fire themselves and they rejoin production, and some of them grow into strategic leadership, some of them stay in tactical. But the managers create the codependence of always being the answer person. And a leader produces the people who are trained and equipped to function as a team without a manager. We'll show you how that works and how there's no chaos or anarchy in it at all. I want to talk a little bit about the best way to make this change from the boss-centered structure to a mission-centered one. A simple principle guides all of this, which is that in creating significant change, we should always add first, not subtract first. We don't create a vacuum without managers or without familiar structure and then introduce something new. Hey, this is gone. Now let me tell you where we're going. That just scares people. You created a vacuum. You took away the familiar. We first add something that they would find motivating and attractional that begins to replace the old. And as that new principle, practice, or tool takes hold, they're going to see that the old principle, practice, or tool, in this case, a manager, doesn't need to be there. A great way to introduce this mission-centered organization before changing anything is to have what we call a reset ceremony, to reset our view of the work structure from bosses to the mission. In life, any big change worth doing usually comes with a ceremony, right? And some new rituals like graduation, getting married, breaking ground for a new structure. Ceremonies communicate at least two things. Number one, that the change is important. That's why we're doing a ceremony around it. And number two, we really mean it. Or we wouldn't go to all this trouble to have a ceremony, and we would just put out a text and move on. And then we add new rituals. Once we've had the reset ceremony, then we add new rituals. Okay, this is what we used to do. This is how we're going to do it going forward. Like the guy at Concentrus. Hey, don't ask me. The new ritual is ask the boss. And then we'll all work on this together to figure out what we should be doing. So we add new rituals to replace the old ones so we don't fall back into the old habits. Over the coming dozen or so podcasts, we'll introduce the 12 tools of distributed decision-making as new rituals to replace the old factory system rituals. If we don't follow a ceremony with new rituals, we'll fall right back into the old habits. But let's first talk about the ceremony. So let's imagine the power of this moment in what we call a reset ceremony. A leader gets the whole company together, all three of them, or all 300 of them. I've seen it in both. A strategic leader stands in front of the entire organization and says, today, I'm stepping down as your boss. I'm firing myself as your boss. And all the managers here, they have agreed to fire themselves as bosses as well. And we're going to rehire ourselves as leaders and as co-workers with you because we now all serve only one boss. I serve one boss, you serve one boss. The boss is the mission statement. And that's my job going forward. I work for that boss, you work for that boss. So here's the deal. If you ever see me doing anything that does not serve the boss, the mission statement, that seems incongruent with our mission statement, you don't have just the freedom, but more importantly, you have the responsibility to help me get focused again on serving only the mission. And if I ever see you not serving the boss, I'm asking for the same permission to refocus you. Let's all make every decision going forward by asking, how does this decision support fulfilling our mission? How does this decision help us serve our customer? I've seen this, and it's a powerful moment. I've witnessed it. Think of what gets kicked in at that moment. More important than anything, it immediately begins to flatten the hierarchy in a very healthy way, taking all the politics out, and gives us all a true north of the mission statement to guide every decision. We are all now under just one boss, the mission. And every person, every department, every function in the business now only exists to serve that one boss. It's not about how do I make my boss happy or how do I make my department bigger. It's a powerful moment. We're all in this to do that. And again, we'll show you how that fleshes out and how easily you can actually do this without chaos, without anarchy. You're just going to go straight to better metrics with this process. Here's some other implications, some positive implications of being a mission-centered organization. As with every tool and practice I'm going to present, and I do present, the mission-centered approach turns hierarchy on its side to encourage us to relate horizontally, not vertically. When fully implemented, it eliminates power positions and power titles that power rank people, such as president, vice president, director, manager, supervisor. None of that tells you what value anybody brings to the organization. It simply tells you how big their gun is. Here's how many people I can fire. Here's how many people you can fire. That's all that stuff tells you, is who's more powerful than the next person. That's just not helpful. That focus is, as Drucker said, is just poisonous. None of these give insight to someone's contribution or value. They're just focused solely on who is above and below me in the power struggle. At my company, Crankset Group, everyone is titled functionally by the greatest contribution they bring to the business. We're all chiefs. I just make fun of chief executive officer and all those C's. We're all chiefs because we are. Some of us have the same functional title. I think one's called Chief Hospitality Officer. We have a Chief Results Officer, a Chief Transformation Officer. We have a few of those. Chief Relationship Officer, Chief Connecting Officer, Chief Operations Officer. That's the traditional title, but it tells you what people do. I think we have one called the Chief Get It Done Officer. Sometimes people take their titles from what other people see as their value to the organization. Everybody proudly wears a title that proclaims their greatest contribution in a results-based world, not a ranking system that focuses on power, competition, and politics. A mission-centered approach will allow you to do that. Another powerful implication of becoming mission-centered is a shift away from titles and departments to an emphasis on roles and functions. We don't need titles. If you want a title, it should be a title of your role. Here's the value I bring to this. And it doesn't have to be the marketing department. What if it was the marketing function, and the marketing functions is to serve the mission? It's not about us building fiefdoms. It's about us using our functions, all of us, to serve the mission. A strategic tech leader no longer owns the technology department, but uses the technology function to serve the mission. We stop thinking about creating boundaries by departments and focus instead on cooperation between functions for the sake of the mission. Territorial squabbles go away, and we are compensated for how well our function serves the mission, not for the size of our budget, our staff, and our square footage. That is a radical change, and it's not hard. It's not easy. I would say it's not simple, but it's something that everybody can do. Get away from paying people based on the size of their budget, their staff, and their square footage. And let's compensate people based on their contribution and how well their function is serving the mission. You might actually get more money for downsizing your function because you don't need as much to serve the mission. That's how we do things. Needless political rivals become taboo in a mission-centered organization. They're just not necessary. They don't work. There's no point in them because there's no ladder to climb. People who want to hoard money, staff, and assets must reset their values in that reset ceremony. It's no longer a sign of a powerful leader to accumulate more control, but a sign of self-focus that does not serve the mission or the company. Remember, as Musk said, we are all in the same boat. Always view yourself as working for the good of the company, and I would say for the good of the mission, and never for your department. In the next podcast, we're going to unpack this mission-centered organization a little bit better to show how it works, how it can create organic structure versus the traditional imposed hierarchy, and I'll share some remarkable examples of how this more organic approach to leadership in the participation age is working in some companies we'll all recognize, and you'll be surprised that some of them have been using it for 50, 60 or more years. No managers, no hierarchy that is imposed. And I'll see you in that podcast to see how we work that out.
That wraps up another episode of the Get Off the Treadmill podcast. If you found this podcast helpful, please subscribe and hit the like button to ensure you are receiving the latest tools you need to grow your business and to get off the treadmill. If you want more information on the 3 to 5 Club, the Crankset Group, or to book Chuck as a business advisor, speaker, or workshop leader, you can contact us at grow@cranksetgroup.com. Until next time, have a great week.